Woo! Hey guys, what's going on? It's the NRL Fantasy Fanatic coming at you with Supercoach, KFC, Daily Telegraph, whatever you want to call it these days. It's round number 6. We're from round number 5. Doing a quick recap. We are a day late in producing this video. I do apologize. It's been pretty hectic with the whole newborn baby and getting on top of all the other things that are associated with that. The baby boy's doing really healthy. He's doing great. He is healthy, I should say. And thank you so much for everyone who's dropped compliments, Facebook comments, YouTube comments, likes on the videos, subscriptions over the last couple of weeks in congratulating us. Can't complain. Things are going well. It's a whole new world for me being my first kiddo. But without any further ado, let's talk about round number 5 that just passed. We scored 1,109 points, which was a little bit lower than our usual rolling average. However, that seemed to be the case across the book for everyone. So when you compare us to the rest of the field, it was actually pretty good. We actually still went down ranks. We went from being inside the top 1,000 to 1,037th, as you can see. Seems to be consistent right now. We're teetering on that top 1,000th ring. In, then out, in, then out, in, then out. Even though we're scoring considerably well. What seems to be the difference between my team and a lot of other teams that makes me go in and out of that flux is Nicho Hynes. And it's purely Nicho Hynes. I did notice that, 50% of coaches out there own Nicho Hynes. Nicho Hynes scored 117. Absolutely killing it. I think he's the second highest rated Supercoach scorer this season so far in the 5 rounds. People would have captained him and they would have caught up, and it only takes an extra 20-30 points to drop or gain 5 to 200 places here or there, and the lower down the ranks you are, the smaller the score advantage that you have, the bigger gain you're going to get across the ranks. So we noticed that 2 weeks ago when Nicho Hynes scored below 50, all of a sudden I'm back in the top 1,000. As soon as he scores over 100, absolutely kills it. I then push out of the top 1,000. Now, in saying that, am I going all out to chase Nicho Hynes? And the answer to that is no. I could, but I don't want to. I think there are a couple of key Supercoach guns out there that I'm just deciding not to bring into my team, and that's fair. I may be making the wrong call, and I've got to sleep with that decision and go with the ebbs and flows. But my thinking is that you can't have every Supercoach gun. And, I think that Nicho Hynes has just had an absolute blinder of the first 5 rounds. I don't expect him to be scoring above 100 points week in, week out. And I think most coaches out there that own Nicho Hynes don't expect that either. But, I can't just chase the tail. I can't just, make my team into the guys who are in the top 100, because otherwise we're never going to gain enough points to kind of topple them. It is a risk we always take in Supercoach, not following everyone else. But the advantage there is if that percentage gets more than 50% of people coaches on there and he has one bad round, all of a sudden you're back in the fight. I'll easily make 500 spots if Nicho Hynes gets a 30 and he, a lot of people go for that captain's option. But look, he's doing an absolutely amazing job. He's killing it, so to speak. And it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough for those of us who decided not to go with him. But it is what it is. We can't have everyone in the team that we want or the best scorers all the time. I've made 2 trades already this week. They're pretty no-brainers in my world. And before I made any of my trades, the number one thing that I always do is I evaluate my ongoing team. Are there any emergencies that I need to push out in terms of extremely high break-evens and they're going to go decrease in value significantly, and I need to push them out of my squad for someone else if they're not a gun and I'm not going to hold them for the long term? Are there any cheapies that I need to bring in? And usually the information from the player research of the most traded in, traded out gives you a really good understanding of that. And I know most of you out there utilize that information. But for me, I have a very good core 13 players on the park. My bench is very suspicious. I have 4 players that I feel comfortable right now in putting that reserve marker on. That's Tedesco, May, Schneider, and Firma. Outside of that, I don't want to be making any further trades that I believe is going to jeopardize the total maximum points I'm going to get for that round. And in saying that, and what I was kind of leading to is that one of the most seen trades we've got this week, in fact, if I look at the most trades, is Blake Taff in for James Tedesco. Now, I totally understand where people are coming from. Tedesco is not scoring as well as he should have. That spine for the Roosters is not gelling. We're not seeing the Tedesco of old. We're not seeing those high scores, those consistent scores. We're not seeing many runs through the middle. The tackle bustling, hustling, fullback, New South Wales, and Australian representative that we're used to seeing. Now, the thing for me is I could bring Taff in, I could save a lot of money, and I could push somewhere else to have a gun in another position. But I'm not that desperate to have a gun anywhere else because, as I mentioned, I've got my 13. Your position may be very different. You may need to trade down a Teddy or someone else that's a gun in order to bring in another gun in another area. For me, I'm willing to hold on to Tedesco for another week. If we believe he's actually going to get that 60-point score, and so far he's averaging 59, so we'll round that up to 60, he's only going to lose 31 grand. Now, by not bringing in Blake Taff this week, I wouldn't play him anyway because there's a couple of question marks above him. The most frightening thing about Blake Taff for me is if they decide to put Johnson in the fullback role, slide Taff into the centres, it wouldn't be unheard of. It really depends what the Roosters' short to mid-term's going to be filling in that Latrell role. So I'm a little bit skeptical what they may do. And that's the reason why I haven't made that trade. And I want to depend on Teddy to get a good score this week. We've seen a lot of coaches out there trade out players, and we called them out week in, week out of people trading out guns and then being punished the next week when they've went big. Tony Staggs, great example, lost about 40, 50 grand, all of a sudden scores 100 and something points. Everyone wants him back in the squad. Dave Fifita, exact same story. Scoring lower than what we expected, all of a sudden scores 107, goes up in value. Guess what? People are trading him back in. That's what we want to avoid. We want to make sure that we're not making trades for absolutely no reason. And that's the test of time for any super coach or any fantasy coach or anyone who does draft or NFL trading or EPL trading is burning through your trades just for the sake of it. There's a time to be patient, and if you're never patient, you're just going to suffer in the long term at the back end, mid to back end of the season when you can't make the trades that you need. So for me, I can't make the Taff trade in. The biggest downside for me is that I lose 30 grand on Tedesco, and I don't gain anything by getting in Taff now because Taff has only played one game. He's got one more week, or he has to play an additional round in order to get his score adjusted. I still think he'd be a great filler who's going to be playing for the next couple of weeks irregardless, but I'm in no rush to get him. You know, I never know what's going to happen the following week. If I bring in Blake Taff this week, don't end up playing him anyway, he gets injured, I've just burnt 2 trades because I traded him in and then I had to trade him out immediately. There's no point burning trades just for the sake of it. You could argue that, hey, I don't want to lose the 30 grand on Tedesco, but the points for me is well worth it. You know, Teddy could come out and have an absolute blinder. I wouldn't put it past him. He's still going to be playing 80 minutes. He's still behind a good forward pack in the Roosters. I can't justify the trades. So the trades I've made, Nate Butcher, as you would have seen in the last couple of weeks, I played Nate Butcher. He's gone completely ripe. He scored very well for me. He's gained about 50, 60 grand while in my team. Unfortunately, he did go down last week with a bit of an injury. He was on the cusp of either scoring or getting injured when he was, 3 or 5 meters out the line. Unfortunately, instead of scoring, which would have absolutely blown up his value even more, he ended up getting injured, being taken off. Looked likely to play 80 minutes, actually. So the decision I've made this week is because Butcher's break-even is about 70 from memory, is to trade him out, bring in Brodie Jones. Brodie Jones has already played twice. He played 80 minutes last week. The 80 minutes last week, it's a bit controversial purely because he went to centres, a lot of injuries. I expect him to play bigger minutes back in the second row spot this week. So I've brought him in. We know he's going to make value over the next couple of weeks. We know that he's cheap. 275k. Sure, he's not as cheap as a Taff, but I'm not that desperate to bring him money. The other position I had traded in was Harry Grant. And this, to me, is a no-brainer. I had Reed Marnie, 11th highest scoring hooker this season. Reed Marnie's minutes started to diminish this week indefinitely when Mitch Rain has been named as the 17th man again. Mitch Rain is a specialist hooker. He'll always most likely, and I'm saying that with great certainty, come in to steal minutes from Reed Marnie, whereas other utilities for the squad may come in at lock, may come in at second row, or in the halves, just like Jake Arthur was. So for me, I need to bring out Marnie. There's new information available. We've seen how the last couple of weeks goes. We need to bring him out. He's going to continue to go down. It is a shame. We would have started with Harry Grant at the start of the season, I think for sure, if he wasn't injured. And the reality is we haven't missed out on much. He's only played 3 rounds. He's already scoring well above any other hooker out there. He's averaging 85.3 compared to Damien Cook at 66.6. That pretty much means that for every week you have Harry Grant in your team, you're going to be scoring more than every other team out there by at least 20 points, purely on that factor. Yes, he is the most expensive hooker, but if I could give you a guarantee that each round you're going to be scoring more points than 99% of hookers out there, you'd always go for him. Whereas, a Nicho Hynes, who we were talking about earlier, you can't guarantee that against all the other halves out there, like a Cleary, a Moses, or even a Dylan Brown at 5'8" at the moment. So I think it's a no-brainer. I think you have to bring in Harry Grant if you didn't last week. He's played 3 games. He's had a rest period during the whole COVID shenanigans. He is by far the best hooker in the game, not only in Supercoach but also on the field for any team. We saw that when he played for the Tigers. He absolutely pulled that team up by the scruff of their neck, and the minute that he was no longer in that squad, they just melted. So I think you need Harry Grant. He loves running the ball. He always finds space. He's always good for a follow-through. He's looking for offloads from other players in order to make up the next run-up and catch other teams off guard. He can score tries. We're not relying on it. He is owned by 26%. I think the time is now, or kind of never, to bring him in. You can wait a few weeks, but every week that you wait, you're going to be behind the 8 ball a little bit. So I brought him in. It's a pick and stick. You put him in there and you play him for the rest of the year. You don't have to be concerned with what's happening with the team. I don't believe Brandon Smith will be stealing time from him. I think Craig Bellamy is happy to continue to have him at the 9 spot. Unfortunate to Smith, but it is what it is. So he's absolutely killing at the moment. So that's going to be a pick for me this week. I think you have to make that trade in. Unfortunately, Payne Haas is out for 1 week. We saw the whole Albert Kelly stepping on his feet, scuffing his shoes, whatever it was, and the boys getting a little bit rowdy. It wasn't even that rowdy. It was, I don't know. I can imagine that if you had a camera on all the footy players 24/7, they'd be a lot worse than that little misunderstanding or scuffle or having a laugh or trolling. Yeah. I can't understand where Haas was coming from. If you have a new pair of kicks and someone's doing that, especially if it's on purpose, it's a bit of a jerk move. Put them in their place. Whatever. But you got to hold Haas. And that's going to be my next segue is, what are people doing this week? Because if you look at the most traded out players, Payne Haas is up there. I can't believe it. He's going to be suspended for 1 round. He is the most consistent front row scoring position in the game. We'll just double confirm that and make sure I'm not making that up. 382. He's cheaper than Isaiah Papali. I the front row position in Supercoach for me is the most difficult spot because you've got so many cheap options, yet you've got so many good players that can hold the spot there for your squad, but you don't necessarily want to fill them up with guns because you got the cheapies. So people have made way having 3 spots on rotation between Thompson, King, Josh King, and whoever else just because of that very reason. So yeah, I don't want to be playing Josh King, but hey, he's been playing pretty well. Averaging 47, can't complain. But let's talk about this for a second. I don't believe it's the right trade. You know, if you're pulling him out and you plan to have him back next week, what are you thinking? It's absolutely mind-boggling that people are flipping him out as a priority. The 6th most traded out player, and we've only had 1 day since Teamless Tuesday. 3,000 coaches out there. I reckon they're going to completely regret it the following week. But what do you do? What do you do? You know, it kind of is what it is. The only 2 outperforming front rollers you can see right now is Papali'i, who's actually playing in the 2nd row, probably why he's scoring a little bit better. But yeah, I just can't see it. Jeremy Nanai, I believe he's run his course. James Tedesco, I can understand it if you're pulling out Tedesco and you're comfortable that your 17, including your reserves, are going to score well. Bullemor was a trade out 2 weeks ago. If you delayed it, it's not that big of a deal. Maybe you're trying to suss out it was going well. Xavier Coates, I think, is a good case that illustrates just because you change teams doesn't mean you change as the player you are. Sometimes it's beneficial. If you're in the Storm, I can understand people are expecting you to score a lot more, have a lot more try-scoring opportunities in the Bronx, but it just hasn't worked out. Dominic Young, injured. Agreed. Luke Keary, hey, he's another player. I'm surprised so many started with him in the first place. And I kind of don't agree that if you stuck with him in round 1, there's not much that's changed in the first 5 rounds for you to trade him out. Yeah, he hasn't been scoring well, but the Roosters haven't been absolutely killing it like they have in the prior year. Peter Hiku, we spoke about this gent several weeks ago, and we were very surprised at the number of people who were bringing him in just because of his negative break-even. And now that he's lost 20 grand, he's only made 31 grand up in total across the 5 weeks. Would that have been worth trading him in post round 2? Probably not. Post round 3? Absolutely not. I don't know. I think the writing was on the wall. Tino, again, surprised. And I am looking at the most traded out players, right? Tino, very surprised. He's made money across the season. He's done exactly what he's done every year, is that he breaks away from last year's score, has a couple of good scores. I don't know why. Again, it goes back to the philosophy of why do you have him in your team in the first place if you're trading him out now, unless there's another cheapie or a reason that you're doing it. But fair enough. Latrell Mitchell, totally understand he's out for a while. Koula, most traded in. Not surprised, but also he's been pushed to centre. We'll see if he gets that fullback spot over Garrick when the team actually takes the park. He will make money. He's the cheapest out there, 175. Taff, totally understand. Jones, understand as well. Manu, yeah. Joey Manu. I can understand that people are trying to bring him in to fill that spot at centre, and fullback is killing it. He seems to be getting a lot more ball. And you know what, though? He's not stationary in the centre spot in attack this year. He seems to be roaming a bit. Kind of like having 2 fullbacks with Tedesco. Maybe that's why we're seeing Tedesco score a little bit lower. But I still think his scores are very situational. I think there's still so many good cheapy centres that you could have. But if you're looking to bolster your squad, not a bad option. I just don't know how consistent it's going to be playing at the centre position. Always the drawback when you have gun centres. As case in reference, Dane Gagai. Papali'i, I can understand people bringing him in, possibly for Haas, possibly because he's just solid. Mitch Moses, not surprised. 4,000 of you out there want to do it. Yeah, I'm assuming if you're bringing in Moses, most combinations are going to be with the other spot being Schneider or possibly Hynes, depending upon how you've decided to format your team. Joshua King, we said 2 weeks ago you needed to bring him in. People still bring him in. Solid gun. Playing lock, big minutes. Bellamy loves him. In the Matty Johns interview with Bellamy, they spoke about Joshua King. They singled him out as one of the tougher players there that gave absolute 100%. And we know Bellamy loves guys who aren't necessarily the most skillful, but put in that 100% effort. And he seems to be doing those extra 1%ers week in, week out. Harry Grant, yep, I'm on board with. Taylor May, price is going to go through the roof. Should have brought him in last week. If you didn't, yikes. But hey, it's all good. Ruben Cotter. He's on the interchange. People are bringing him in. It must be because of his break even, I'm assuming. Must be. I don't... Yeah, Cowboys. 15. Yeah, I don't know. I think he's going to be a mid-ranger at the end of the day. What are the other things I wanted to cover in this video? The rest of my squad. Who am I going to captain this week? I'm thinking Moses versus the Tigers. I'm backing that the Tigers will have another miserable round. I don't wish that upon them, but as an Eels fan and a Moses captain advocate, yeah, he can go big. If they score big numbers, he gets a couple of more goal line kicks, conversions that is. All of a sudden, he's peaking back in the 70s, 80s, 90s. I think he'd be good to score at least 60. I'd be surprised if he gets less than 50, given that he seems to be running the ball a little bit more, and getting involved and looking at those extra run-through plays with his squad. And, yeah, just as a natural kicker for the squad, I think he's going to be killing it. I've got Jack Wighton. He scored a little bit lower than we wanted. Lachlan Ilias is still doing the job at 5'8" for us. We've got Aitken, Tago, Bird, Penasini, May. Koula, we've held him since the start. Glad he's back. Didn't have to burn a trade bringing him in. Schiller, it's tough because there's not really another centre that I can bring him in. There's no point trading him to someone unless I think they're going to make money and if they're a complete rookie. I've got Pap and Tedesco. The fullbacks of both those squads didn't do all that well, but I'm okay with all that. I think this week there are a lot of good trades that you should be making. I think Harry Grant is one of them. I do like most of these trades here, except the Ruben Cotter. Maybe there's something that I'm missing here. That's very obvious that I'm just missing, but I don't know what that could be. But otherwise, pretty up with the squad. Let's just have a quick look at the squad coming first at the moment. What are they doing? Different to us. How are they doing all that well? They've got Chrissy Randall and Harry Grant. They're playing Chris Randall as well. That's pretty cool. That's really cool to see. He's actually utilizing both of those hookers. He's got a very similar lineup in his front row, except he also has Pengai Jr., who seems to be killing it for the Dogs. He's getting big minutes. That's what you want to see. So far, so good for this squad. Papali, Fifita, Firma. Geez, this squad's actually forming up to be a very, very good squad. A very solid squad. He's got Carrigan, who's out, who he's not playing. That's he didn't play, obviously. That's why he couldn't play him. Fair play. He's out, expected to be available for round 12, so maybe he'll be trading him out this week for possibly Brodie Jones. Tuilagi, 38. He's got the same problem with us. He's also gone for a cheap second row center wing, and I'm assuming that his second row center wings he can trade back and forth. He can do that with only Aitken, so he didn't go Bert. I can do that with Tago as well. So he's obviously picked him knowing that he will not play throughout the entire season, so he's just looking for options that are 175k cheap. Want to fill the rest of the squad with big name players. Fair play. Nicho Hynes captain. Hey, what do we say? Very typical out there. A lot of people got him. A lot of people are captaining Nicho Hynes. He's killing it. Brady Schneider, who didn't play. I didn't actually play him last week either, and that kind of sucked, but it is what it is. He's got Lachlan. He's got Dylan Brown. So we actually played Lachlan Ilias this week, even though the last couple of weeks he's played pretty averagely. That's pretty ballsy, but fair play. Aitken, who went big. Tago, May, Penasini. he's got the same problem I've got. Schiller, who's out in the dust. Bullemor, who has only played the one game. Koula, who's playing. Pap and Reece Walsh. So, actually, a lot of differences between the two squads. Some similarities, obviously at the top end, but a lot of differences with the squad I've got, and there's probably a lot of differences with the squad you've got, and that's good to see, because that means that the risk of your team going big and other teams going low would be rewarded. On the same note, if you don't risk it for the biscuit, you're not going to get up the ranks, so to speak. So, make sure you're making very safe trades. Don't burn your trades for absolutely no reason. They have to make sense. If you're just trading for the sake of it, a gun to a gun, with absolutely no additional information that gives you the reason to do that, don't do it. I've justified all my trades this week. Hopefully you're on board, or you agree. If not, let me know in the comments down below. I hope everyone's doing well, and I hope you all kill it in Supercoach this week. Let me know who you're going to captain this week. Best of luck. Whoosh.